Somewhere in China, monks built a temple on a mountain peak so narrow there's barely room to stand. To reach it, you climb stairs carved into vertical rock. One side is a mountain, the other side is air. Fall and you're dead before anyone hears you scream. Somewhere else, there's a cave with a river that's never seen sunlight. Not dark, pitch black, the kind where your eyes stay wide open trying to see anything, and there's nothing. The river's been flowing down there for 5 million years in total darkness. There's a lake where the water is so clear you can see 40 feet down. Except it's at 12,000 feet elevation, where most people can barely breathe. The air's so thin, your head pounds just standing still. But the lake sits there, crystal clear, like altitude doesn't matter. There's a glacier that should have melted decades ago. Climate change killed most glaciers in China. This one's still here, still frozen, still growing in some spots. Scientists can't explain it. These places don't make sense. They exist anyway. The rules say they shouldn't work. They work anyway. Wudang Mountains rise 10,070 feet in Hubei province. Known as the birthplace of Taoist martial arts and the legendary home of Sun Wukong from Chinese folklore. These aren't just mountains. They're a living monument to human determination carved into stone over centuries. More than 30 temples and shrines cling to these peaks. Some perched on cliff edges so narrow that construction seems impossible. The buildings weren't placed here for convenience. They were positioned according to Taoist principles about energy flow and spiritual power. Every temple location was chosen because something about that specific spot felt different, stronger, more connected to whatever force the Taoists believed flowed through the earth. The highest summit, Tianzhu Peak, towers over everything else. Reaching it means climbing stone staircases that were carved by hand hundreds of years ago. Some steps are so steep they're practically vertical. Others wind around cliff faces where one side is solid rock and the other side drops into clouds. The monks who built these paths did it without machinery, without safety equipment, without any of the tools modern construction takes for granted. Just chisels, hammers, rope, and absolute conviction. If these scenes of China fascinated you, like the video and subscribe. It helps us share these stories with more people. What makes Wudang extraordinary isn't just the physical structures, it's what they represent. For over 1,000 years, martial artists came here to train in isolation, practicing techniques that combined combat with meditation, movement with stillness. The mountain became synonymous with a specific style of martial arts that emphasized internal energy over external force, flowing movement over rigid power. UNESCO recognized Wudang as a World Heritage Site in 1994, acknowledging both its natural beauty and cultural significance. But the recognition came centuries too late. The mountains were already sacred, already powerful, already known to anyone who understood that some places hold more than just rock and trees. Walking through Wudang means moving through layers of history. Every temple has a story. Every stone staircase represents decades of labor. Every view from a summit carries the weight of countless people who stood in that exact spot, seeking enlightenment, strength, or simply a moment of peace above the chaos of the world below. The mountains don't care about recognition. They stood before humans arrived. They'll stand after we're gone, but for the time we're here, they offer something rare. A glimpse of what's possible when human ambition aligns with natural grandeur. When spiritual seeking meets geological reality. When the temporary manages to honor the eternal. Mount Huashan is where people go to test whether they actually want to keep living. The highest peak reaches 7,070 feet, but altitude isn't what makes this mountain famous. It's the paths. Some sections are just wooden planks bolted to sheer cliff faces, barely wide enough for one person to shuffle across sideways. Below the planks is nothing, just air and a drop that would give you plenty of time to reconsider your life choices before physics finish the conversation. Safety harnesses exist now, but they're a modern addition. For centuries, people made this climb with nothing but grip strength and questionable judgment. Other sections feature stone staircases cut nearly vertical into rock faces. Your hands grip chains bolted into the mountain while your feet search for steps that seem designed for someone half your height with twice your flexibility. Every muscle screams. Every rational thought suggests turning back. But people keep climbing because reaching the top means something. Proof that fear is optional. Evidence that the body can do more than the mind thinks possible. Mount Huashan has been sacred for over 2,000 years. Taoist monasteries dot the peaks, built by monks who apparently looked at these cliffs and thought, yes, perfect place for a meditation retreat. The monasteries aren't large. They don't need to be. Anyone who makes it to the top has already done the real work. The mountain handles the transformation. The temples just mark the spot. The mountain was once called Western Mountain, one of China's 5 sacred peaks. About 100,000 tourists visit annually now, generating significant tourism revenue. But the mountain doesn't feel touristic. It feels indifferent, like it's tolerating human presence but could shake us off whenever it gets bored. The combination of stunning scenery and genuine danger creates something unique. This isn't sanitized adventure. This is the real thing. The kind where consequences are actual and immediate. Where attention matters. Where respect isn't optional. Standing on the summit after climbing the world's most perilous hiking trail does something to a person. It recalibrates what difficult means. It shifts the baseline for what qualifies as an obstacle. If you can do this, you can do most things. The mountain doesn't hand out participation trophies. Making it to the top is the trophy. Erhai Lake sprawls across 48 square miles in Yunnan province. One of China's largest freshwater lakes, the name translates to ear sea, because from above, the lake's shape resembles a human ear. Not that anyone knew this until aerial photography existed. The ancient people who named it must have had remarkable imaginations. The lake averages 22 feet deep, though certain sections drop deeper. This shallow depth creates perfect conditions for aquatic life. Nearly 100 fish species live here, including rare and endangered varieties found nowhere else. The ecosystem is delicate, balanced on factors that could shift with climate change or human interference. What's remarkable about Erhai is its age and origin. The lake formed over 1 million years ago through tectonic activity. Sections of earth shifted, creating a depression that gradually filled with water. The lake has witnessed climate changes, species extinctions, the rise and fall of civilizations. It's been here long enough to become fundamental to the region's character. The lake holds roughly 400 million cubic meters of water, supplying millions of people. This isn't recreational water. This is life-sustaining resource. The lake's health directly impacts human survival in the region, making conservation efforts critical rather than optional. Traditional fishing communities line the shores, maintaining practices passed down through generations. Fishermen use techniques developed centuries ago. Understanding the lake's rhythms through experience rather than scientific study. They know where fish gather in different seasons, how weather affects behavior, which methods work best in specific conditions. This knowledge exists in practice, not in books. The lake reflects surrounding mountains with such clarity that the boundary between water and sky becomes ambiguous. On calm days, the world appears to double. Mountains above, mountains below. Sky meeting sky. The effect creates visual disorientation that's strangely peaceful. Like reality decided to mirror itself just to see what would happen. Wunu Mountain rises 2,600 feet in Liaoning province. Famous for stone carvings from the Qing dynasty and a thriving coniferous forest ecosystem. This isn't the tallest mountain, isn't the most dramatic, but it carries weight that has nothing to do with elevation. The mountain covers roughly 25,000 acres, making it one of Lianing's largest wildlife sanctuaries. Hundreds of plant and animal species live here, many rare or endangered. The forest provides habitat that's increasingly scarce as development consumes land. What exists here can't be recreated elsewhere. When this type of ecosystem disappears, it's gone permanently. Temperature extremes define the area. Summer can hit 85 degrees Celsius. Winter drops below zero. This range creates harsh conditions that only the toughest species survive. The forest isn't lush and welcoming, it's dense and demanding. Beautiful in the way that dangerous things often are. During wartime, Wunu Mountain served as a hideout for resistance fighters. The terrain provided natural protection. Dense forest obscured movement. Steep slopes discouraged pursuit. The mountain became a strategic asset, its geography determining who lived and who died in conflicts that most people have forgotten. Today, the mountain hosts folk celebrations organized by locals. These festivals maintain cultural traditions that connect modern people to ancestral practices. Music, dance, food, rituals. The specifics vary, but the purpose remains constant. Remembering where you came from, honoring what came before. Acknowledging that you're part of something larger than yourself. The Qing dynasty stone carvings scattered throughout the mountain tell stories in images rather than words. Some depict religious scenes, others show daily life from centuries ago. Together they form a visual history, showing what mattered enough to carve into stone. What people thought was worth preserving. Yandang Mountains formed roughly 100 million years ago during the Mesozoic era, shaped primarily by volcanic activity and water erosion. The highest peak reaches 6,933 feet, but elevation doesn't capture what makes this place special. It's the shapes, the formations, the way rock weathered into forms that seem deliberately sculptural. UNESCO designated Yandang a World Heritage Site in 2010, recognizing 25,000 acres of protected terrain. The designation came with rules about development, tourism, impact, and conservation. Necessary rules, but also slightly absurd. These mountains survived 100 million years without human protection. They'll probably manage another million regardless of what we decide. One of the mountain's most famous features is Fairy Rock, a naturally formed stone tower standing 66 feet high. Local legends claim it holds mystical powers. Whether or not you believe in mystical powers, the formation is objectively strange. The way it stands, isolated. The way weather shaped it into something that looks more designed than random. Standing in front of it creates a feeling that's hard to articulate. Like you're looking at something that shouldn't exist, but undeniably does. The hiking trails through Yandang wind through constant geological drama. Narrow passages between vertical rock walls, natural archways formed by erosion. Caves that tunnel into cliff faces. Waterfalls that pour down from heights where you can't see the source. Every turn reveals something new, something unexpected. Something that makes you stop and recalibrate your understanding of what landscape can be. The area became volcanic millions of years ago, when tectonic forces created conditions for magma to reach the surface. Multiple eruptions built up layers of volcanic rock. Then time and water went to work, slowly carving, eroding, shaping. The result looks less like standard geology and more like nature experimenting with abstract sculpture. Different seasons transform the mountains completely. Spring brings mist that wraps everything in white, making solid rock seem to float. Summer deepens the green of vegetation that somehow grows in cracks and crevices. Autumn sets the sparse forests ablaze with color. Winter occasionally brings snow, turning the dark volcanic rock into a monochrome landscape of blacks and whites. Qiandao Lake contains 1,078 islands, most of them completely undeveloped. The lake itself is man-made, created when a dam was built for hydropower in 1959. The dam flooded a valley, submerging towns, villages, and agricultural land. People who lived there had to relocate. Their homes, their farms, their entire communities now sit at the bottom of a lake that covers 573,000 acres. The lake reaches 100 feet deep in places, creating perfect conditions for diverse aquatic ecosystems. Fish populations exploded, plants adapted, birds discovered new nesting sites on islands that were once hilltops. Nature reclaimed what humans temporarily controlled, turning tragedy for displaced communities into accidental wilderness. What makes Qiandao genuinely strange is what lies beneath. An entire city sits on the lake bottom, preserved in cold, dark water. Buildings still standing, streets still laid out, objects still where they were left. When evacuation orders came, it's a time capsule of 1959 China, accessible only to divers willing to navigate murky water and navigate around structures that are slowly collapsing. The submerged city has become a tourist attraction. Dive operators take people down to swim through old town squares, peer into abandoned buildings, touch walls that once enclosed ordinary lives. It's eerie, not haunted, just frozen. Like someone hit pause on an entire community and never pressed play again. The hydropower project was deemed necessary. China needed electricity. The valley was in the way. That's the calculation. But the human cost was real. Families lost ancestral homes. Communities scattered. Cultural continuity broke. The lake is beautiful now. The islands are stunning. But beauty doesn't erase what was sacrificed to create it. Tianzhu Mountain rises 4,300 feet in Zhejiang province, birthplace of the Tiantai school of Buddhism. The mountain spans roughly 493 acres of peaks, valleys, and untouched forests. This isn't vast by mountain range standards, but the density of significant features packed into this area is remarkable. 8 major rivers flow through Tianzhu, fed by numerous waterfalls. water is everywhere. The sound of moving water provides constant background that makes true silence impossible. Not that anyone seeking peace minds. The water sounds become meditative after a while. White noise that helps the brain quiet. Summer temperatures average around 75 dikipdam. Comfortable for hiking and exploration. Winter drops below 30 diksaikanis. Cold enough to discourage casual tourism, but perfect for those seeking solitude. The climate shifts create distinct seasonal experiences. Same mountain, completely different character depending on when you visit. The Tiantai Buddhist school developed here over 1,400 years ago. Monks studying in Tianzhu's temples created philosophical frameworks that influenced Buddhism throughout East Asia. Their teachings emphasized meditation, scripture study, and practical application of Buddhist principles to daily life. The mountain became synonymous with a particular approach to Buddhist practice, drawing students who traveled from distant regions to study with Tiantai masters. The temples remain active. Monks still live here, maintaining traditions that stretch back centuries. Morning chants echo through valleys. Incense smoke drifts from altar rooms. The daily rhythm of monastic life continues largely unchanged, despite the modern world pressing in from all sides. What draws people to Tianzhu isn't just Buddhist heritage. It's the atmosphere. Something about the combination of mountains, forests, rivers, and human devotion creates a feeling that's difficult to find elsewhere. Peaceful without being boring, serious without being oppressive, sacred without being exclusive. Dongjiang Lake is Hunan Province's largest man-made lake, covering roughly 3,864 acres. Completed in 1970 as part of a hydropower initiative. The lake serves multiple purposes: electricity generation, flood control, water supply, recreation. It's utilitarian infrastructure that happens to be beautiful. The lake reaches maximum depths around 164 feet, creating varied habitat for aquatic species. Summer water temperatures can hit 80 nateg, warm enough for swimming and water sports. The lake has become a popular destination for activities that have nothing to do with its original purpose. What makes Dongjiang interesting beyond its size is a fish species found only in these waters. The bloodfish. It's considered a rare delicacy, prized by culinary enthusiasts willing to pay premium prices. The fish adapted to conditions specific to this lake, making it unable to survive elsewhere. Evolution working in real time, creating something unique in response to new environmental conditions. The lake's creation required flooding agricultural land and relocating communities. Less dramatic than Qiandao Lake's submerged city, but still disruptive to people whose families had worked that land for generations. Development always has costs. The benefits get publicized. The costs get absorbed by people with no alternative. The hydropower project was successful by most measures, It generates electricity reliably, prevents flooding that used to devastate downstream communities, provides water during dry seasons. These are genuine benefits. But quantifying human displacement against kilowatt hours feels like comparing things that don't belong on the same scale. Today, Dongjiang functions as both infrastructure and tourist destination. People fish, boat, swim, and photograph scenery that wouldn't exist without engineering intervention. Nature and human construction have merged into something that feels natural despite being entirely artificial. Mount Siguniang reaches 22,087 feet, one of China's tallest peaks. The name translates to Four Sisters Mountain, referring to four distinct summits that dominate the skyline. Local culture calls it the Goddess of Snow, a title that fits when winter coats the peaks in white that gleams against blue sky. The mountain formed roughly 200 million years ago during intense geological activity as tectonic plates collided, pushing rock upward with forces that reshaped entire continents. The mountain is evidence of violence on a scale humans can barely comprehend. Continents crashing together, the Earth's crust folding like paper. What looks serene and permanent was forged in chaos. The area surrounding Siguniang spans 73,000 acres, home to rare animal species including giant pandas and snow leopards. These aren't zoo animals. These are wild predators and endangered species trying to survive in shrinking habitats. The mountain provides refuge that's increasingly rare as human development claims more land. Thousands of tourists visit Siguniang annually, drawn by dramatic scenery and biodiversity. But it's the climbers who truly test the mountain. Reaching the highest peak requires technical skill, physical endurance, and mental toughness that most people don't possess. Only about 3% of those who attempt the summit succeed. The mountain doesn't grade on a curve. Either you make it or you don't. The failure rate isn't about the mountain being cruel. It's about the mountain being indifferent. Altitude, weather, and terrain create conditions that human bodies aren't designed to handle. Some people can adapt, most can't. The mountain reveals this truth without judgment. Standing at the base, looking up at summits that pierce clouds, creates a particular kind of humility. The mountain makes human achievement seem small, makes time spent worrying about minor problems seem absurd, offers perspective that's impossible to gain, staring at screens in climate-controlled rooms. Hailuogou Glacier has been forming for 25,000 years, dating back to the last ice age. The glacier stretches between 7 and 12 miles depending on seasonal variation, with thickness reaching up to 984 feet in some sections. This is old ice, compressed by its own weight over millennia. Clear and blue from trapped air being squeezed out. Temperatures at Hailuogou range from 18 degrees in winter to 68 degrees in summer. This range keeps the glacier alive despite climate change that's killing glaciers worldwide. The melting rate is increasing, but Hailuogou remains one of China's least affected glaciers, for now. What makes Hailuogou bizarre is the hot springs. Natural hot springs bubble up from underground right next to glacier ice. Water reaching temperatures up to 100 emerges meters away from ice that's been frozen for thousands of years. Steam rises where heat meets cold. The contrast creates a visual paradox that shouldn't exist, but does. Visitors can soak in hot spring pools while looking at glacier ice. Your body in warm water, your eyes on frozen landscape. Two incompatible realities existing simultaneously. The experience messes with your sense of what's possible. Hot and cold aren't supposed to occupy the same space, but geology doesn't care about human expectations. The glacier is retreating. Measurements show it's losing ice faster than it's accumulating. In a few decades, maybe less, Hailuogou might not exist. The ice that took 25,000 years to form could melt in a single human lifetime. That's the trajectory unless something changes. The hot springs will remain. They don't depend on climate. But the strange juxtaposition of ice and heat that makes Hailuogou unique will be gone. Future visitors will see hot springs in a mountain valley. Beautiful, but ordinary. The magic comes from the contradiction. Once the glacier melts, the contradiction disappears. Anren ancient town in Sichuan province preserved its late Qing dynasty European architectural style better than almost anywhere in China. The town covers about 50 acres containing more than 50 ancient residences and cultural relics. Not reconstructions, actual original buildings. The most significant structure is Annenlu Manor, built in 1942 as the home of a wealthy merchant family. The architecture blends Eastern and Western influences in ways that shouldn't work, but do. Chinese roof lines, European arches, traditional courtyards. Modern, for 1942, amenities. The result is unique. A physical manifestation of cultural exchange frozen in brick and wood. The town received National Cultural Heritage Site designation in 2001. Recognition that brought tourists and money, but also pressure to maintain authenticity while accommodating modern visitors. About 1 million people visit annually, a number that challenges preservation efforts. Every tourist contributes to wear. Every foot on ancient stones accelerates decay. Beyond architecture, Anren hosts traditional folk festivals, dragon boat racing in town canals, celebrations following the lunar calendar. These aren't performances for tourists. These are actual community events that locals would hold regardless of outside attention. The fact that visitors can watch doesn't change the fundamental nature of the celebrations. What's valuable about Anren isn't just that it's old. Lots of places are old. What matters is that it's lived in old. People actually live and work in these historic buildings. children grow up playing in courtyards that have witnessed generations. The town isn't a museum. It's a living community that happens to be historically significant. Walking Anren streets means moving through functional history. The medicine shop has been operating from the same building for 80 years. The tea house has served customers in the same room since before World War II. Continuity exists here that's increasingly rare in rapidly modernizing China. Fanjingshan rises 8,150 feet in Guizhou province. Home to China's endangered golden snub-nosed monkeys and over 1,600 plant species. UNESCO designated it a World Heritage Site in 2018. Acknowledging exceptional natural and cultural value concentrated in roughly 30,000 acres. The mountain's most distinctive feature is the mushroom stone, a rock formation that looks exactly like its name suggests. A massive boulder balanced on a narrow stone pillar, appearing ready to topple but stable for thousands of years. The formation defies visual logic. Your eyes report that it should fall. Physics says it won't. The disconnect creates cognitive dissonance that's strangely compelling. The golden snub-nosed monkeys living here exist nowhere else. The species is critically endangered, with populations declining due to habitat loss. Fanjingshan provides refuge, but even protected areas face pressure from climate change, tourism impact, and surrounding development. The monkey's survival isn't guaranteed. The biodiversity here is staggering. The range of plant species results from varied elevation creating multiple climate zones on a single mountain. Lower slopes support subtropical species. Upper reaches host alpine plants. Different ecosystems stack vertically, compressed into a relatively small area. Buddhist temples dot the peaks, including structures perched on summits, reachable only by steep staircases carved into cliff faces. Monks built these temples centuries ago in locations that seem designed to test devotion. Reaching them requires physical effort that becomes spiritual practice. The journey is the point. Walking trails wind through forests where morning mist makes visibility drop to arm's length. Trees appear and disappear like ghosts. Sound becomes muffled. Direction becomes ambiguous. The experience of being lost while following a clearly marked trail creates a strange psychological state, disoriented but safe, uncertain but guided. Fanjingshan's value lies in its completeness. This isn't a single spectacular feature. It's an entire ecosystem functioning as it has for millennia, relatively untouched by human activity. A glimpse of what Earth looks like when we're not actively reshaping it to suit our preferences. Tiantai Mountain reaches 4,300 feet in Zhejiang province, birthplace of the Tiantai school of Buddhism. Over 1,400 years ago, monks studying here developed philosophical frameworks that influenced Buddhist practice throughout East Asia. The mountain became synonymous with a specific approach to Buddhist thought, emphasizing meditation, scripture study, and practical application of teachings. The mountain spans roughly 493 acres, filled with peaks, valleys, and pristine forests. 8 major rivers flow through Tiantai, fed by countless waterfalls. The constant presence of moving water creates an atmosphere that enhances meditation. The sound helps quiet mental chatter, makes concentration easier, provides natural white noise that drowns out distraction. Summer temperatures average 75 degrees, comfortable for hiking and exploration. Winter drops below 30 degrees, cold enough to discourage casual tourism, but perfect for serious students seeking isolation. The climate supports diverse vegetation ranging from subtropical species at lower elevations to hardy alpine plants near the peaks. Temples scattered throughout Tiantai remain active centers of Buddhist practice. Monks live here, maintaining daily routines that haven't changed substantially in centuries. Morning chants, meditation sessions, sutra study, manual labor. The rhythm of monastic life continues regardless of what's happening in the outside world. What draws people to Tiantai isn't just religious significance. It's the atmosphere created by combining natural beauty with human devotion practiced across centuries. The mountain feels different, not mystical necessarily, but distinct. Like accumulated meditation has soaked into the stones. Like the prayers of thousands of monks over hundreds of years have left something tangible behind. Walking Tiantai's trails means moving through living history. Every temple has witnessed countless students seeking enlightenment. Every meditation hall has absorbed silence from practitioners who sat motionless for hours. Every mountain path has felt footsteps from monks who walked the same route daily for decades. The continuity creates weight that's impossible to ignore. Pudacuo became China's first national park in 2007. Established specifically to preserve natural environment and biodiversity. The park protects more than 1,500 acres of natural forest, providing habitat for over 200 rare animal species, including Asian brown bears. Temperature ranges from around 30 degrees Celsius in winter to 75 degrees Celsius in summer, creating varied conditions that support multiple ecosystems. Different climate zones exist within the park, allowing species with different environmental requirements to coexist in relatively close proximity. The park welcomes roughly 500,000 visitors annually, significant numbers that create conservation challenges. Every visitor creates impact. Trails erode. Animals adjust behavior. The park must balance access with preservation, allowing people to experience nature while preventing that experience from destroying what they came to see. What makes Pudacuo culturally significant is its connection to the indigenous Naxi people. They considered this land sacred long before it became a national park. Believed it was a place where heaven and earth communicated, where the boundary between physical and spiritual became thin, where prayer carried more weight than normal. These beliefs shaped how the Naxi interacted with the land, they didn't see it as resource to exploit. They saw it as sacred trust to maintain. This attitude toward land stewardship influenced park management. Conservation efforts incorporate traditional ecological knowledge alongside modern scientific understanding. The forest here is old growth, trees that have stood for centuries. Walking among them creates a sense of scale that's difficult to achieve otherwise. These trees were saplings when dynasties rose and fell, were mature when wars reshaped nations, have witnessed human history while remaining essentially unchanged. They offer perspective that photos can't capture and words struggle to convey. Mingsha Mountain covers roughly 6,000 acres of sand dunes that produce sound when the sand moves. The phenomenon gives the mountain its name, which translates to Singing Sand Mountain. Wind moves sand grains across each other, creating resonance that sounds like drums or distant music. It's an acoustic effect based on grain size, moisture content, and wind speed. Science explains it, but knowing why something happens doesn't make it less strange. Adjacent to the dunes sits Crescent Spring, the only freshwater source in this desert. The spring has existed for over 2,000 years, sustained by a unique hydrological system that prevents it from drying despite being surrounded by sand. How this works isn't fully understood. Underground aquifers, rock formations that channel water, something geological that maintains this improbable oasis. Temperature extremes define the area. Day temperatures can soar, night temperatures plunge. The difference can reach 60 degrees between daytime peak and nighttime low. This makes survival difficult for plants and animals. Only specialized species adapted to these swings can persist. Mingsha Mountain sits on the ancient Silk Road, serving as an important stop for merchants and travelers moving between China and Central Asia. The spring provided water for caravans crossing the desert. Its existence made certain trade routes possible. Commerce followed water. Cities formed where water was reliable. The spring shaped human history by being in the right place with the necessary resource. Walking Mingsha's dunes creates unusual sensory experience. Sand shifts beneath every step, making progress difficult. The resonant sound happens randomly, triggered by your movement, but unpredictable in timing and pitch. Sometimes loud, sometimes barely audible, always slightly unsettling because sound shouldn't come from sand. The contrast between dunes and spring is jarring. Climb to the top of a sand ridge, look down. One side is endless desert. The other side is a pool of clear water surrounded by green vegetation. The boundary is sharp. Meters separate life from sterility. The visual impact is immediate and powerful. Evidence that water determines everything in desert environments. Kanas Lake is an S-shaped body of water covering 4.8 square miles at 5,260 feet elevation. The lake's distinctive emerald green color comes from suspended glacial flour. Fine particles of rock ground by glacier movement and carried into the lake by meltwater. The particles reflect certain wavelengths of light, creating color that shifts based on time of day, season, and viewing angle. The area was shaped by glacial activity, with geological history extending over 300 million years. The landscape shows evidence of ice sheets that advanced and retreated multiple times, carving valleys and depositing rock in patterns that tell stories about climate changes spanning eons. The lake holds roughly 1.7 million cubic meters of water, making it one of the region's largest bodies of water. Maximum depth isn't fully mapped, but certain sections drop deep enough that bottom isn't visible even in clear conditions. This depth supports cold water fish species and maintains temperature stability that benefits the ecosystem. A phenomenon called glowing lake occurs when sunlight hits the water at specific angles, creating unusual reflections and color intensities. The effect is temporary and unpredictable, dependent on weather and sun position. When it happens, the lake seems to emit light rather than reflect it. Photographs capture the effect but flatten it. Being present creates an experience that images can't convey. Archaeological evidence shows the ancient Khanty people inhabited this area thousands of years ago. Cultural relics discovered around the lake provide glimpses into how these people lived, what they valued, how they interacted with harsh mountain environment. Their descendants still live in the region, maintaining cultural practices that connect present to ancient past. The lake sits in remote location, difficult to reach without significant travel. This isolation preserved it from development that transformed more accessible areas. What exists here represents landscape relatively unmodified by human activity. A baseline showing what nature produces without constant human intervention. Laojun Mountain Jiguan Cave features limestone formations dating back over 200 million years. The name Jiguan means rice granary, referring to the cave's shape and the unique structures created by water erosion over incomprehensible timescales. Water flowing through rock, one drop at a time, dissolving limestone molecule by molecule, creating chambers and tunnels through sheer persistence. The cave stretches approximately 1,200 feet with complex networks of tunnels and alcoves. Temperature inside stays between 50 and 60 degrees year-round, providing cool refuge from summer heat and relative warmth during winter cold. This stability makes the cave appealing for creatures seeking consistent environment. A remarkable feature is the cave's water holding capacity. The cave can contain up to 3 million gallons of water, forming underground lakes that exist in complete darkness. These lakes support unique ecosystems adapted to lightless conditions. Blind fish, specialized bacteria, creatures that evolved in isolation, developing characteristics found nowhere else. The cave attracts researchers studying everything from geology to biology to hydrology. Each discipline finds value in different aspects. Geologists examine rock formations to understand tectonic history. Biologists catalog species to map evolutionary adaptation. Hydrologists track water flow to comprehend underground drainage systems. The cave serves as natural laboratory offering data impossible to obtain elsewhere. For tourists, the cave offers alien landscape accessible without leaving Earth. Walking through chambers where rock formations resemble frozen waterfalls or draped fabric creates a sense of unreality. These shapes formed through natural processes, but look deliberately sculptural. Like nature decided to create art and happened to use stone as medium. The formations are fragile. Human touch transfers oils that interfere with continued mineral deposition. Too many visitors create humidity changes that affect formation rates. The cave must be protected from the very people who want to experience it. A paradox without easy resolution. Tianmen Mountain features a natural arch soaring 4,000 feet high, one of the highest natural arches in the world. The opening, called Heaven's Gate, is large enough to fly an aircraft through, which someone did in 1999. Piloting a plane through the arch in a stunt that was either impressive or insane, depending on your perspective on risk. The mountain held spiritual significance for thousands of years before becoming a tourist destination. The Dao people considered it a sacred site, believing the arch was literally a gateway between earthly and heavenly realms. This wasn't metaphor. This was geography with spiritual implications. Walking through the arch meant crossing a boundary that had meaning beyond just moving from one side to the other. Reaching Tianmen requires riding a cable car that stretches 7,455 feet. Noted as the longest cable car in the world, the ride offers spectacular views of landscapes dropping away beneath you. Valleys appearing as gaps in forested mountainsides, distant peaks fading into haze. At the summit, a walking path totaling around 1,500 feet winds through 99 bends, challenging visitors who thought the cable car did all the work. The path is steep, narrow, and exposed in sections where cliffs drop away on one side. It forces attention. Distraction means stumbling. Stumbling means consequences. The glass skywalk extends roughly 2,500 feet, capable of supporting 660 pounds per square foot. Walking on transparent floor hundreds of feet above the ground creates visceral response even when you know the engineering is sound. Your brain screams danger despite evidence of safety. Rational understanding doesn't override instinctive fear. Tianmen Mountain demonstrates that spectacular natural features combined with human engineering create experiences impossible with either alone. The mountain provides raw material, human construction makes it accessible. Neither is sufficient. Both are necessary. Zhangye colorful Danxia features mountains formed from layers of colored rock deposited over 540 million years. The layers contain different minerals that create bands of red, yellow, green, and gray. Iron oxide produces reds. Other minerals contribute yellows and greens. The result looks painted rather than geological. The area spans 124,800 acres of protected terrain. Recognized as UNESCO World Heritage Site in 2010. The designation acknowledges geological significance and promotes conservation efforts. Protects the formations from quarrying, development, and other human activities that would destroy what took 500 million years to create. What makes Zhangye remarkable beyond visual impact is what the rock layers represent. Each band is a chapter in Earth's history. Different colors indicate different environmental conditions when the sediment was deposited. Reading the stripes means reading climate changes, sea level fluctuations, tectonic activity spanning eons. Fossils discovered in the rock layers provide evidence of ancient life. Plants and animals that lived millions of years ago, now preserved as impressions in stone. These fossils help scientists understand evolutionary history. Map when species appeared and disappeared. Reconstruct ecosystems from ages when continents were arranged differently. The formations change appearance throughout the day. Morning light creates subtle colors. Afternoon sun intensifies everything. Sunset turns the entire landscape into flame. Reds and oranges glowing like the rocks are lit from within. Night brings stillness, and stars so bright they cast shadows. Viewing platforms have been constructed as strategic locations, allowing visitors to see the formations without walking on them. This protects the rock from erosion caused by foot traffic, preserves the formations for future generations, acknowledges that some places need to be experienced from distance. Longji rice terraces represent over 1,000 years of agricultural engineering, built by hand primarily by the Zhuang ethnic minority. The terraces weren't created in a single generation. They accumulated gradually as families modified hillsides generation after generation, each adding to what previous generations built. The terraced area covers roughly 3,600 acres with thousands of individual terraces arranged in wave-like patterns following the contours of the mountains. In summer, the terraces flood for rice cultivation, creating what locals call a gigantic mirror. Water reflects sky, clouds, and surrounding peaks. The effect transforms functional farmland into accidental art installation. The irrigation system feeding these terraces is sophisticated. Designed to distribute water evenly across slopes without erosion. Water flows from higher terraces to lower ones, controlled by channels and gates that have been refined over centuries. The system works without pumps or motors. Gravity does the work. Human ingenuity directed the flow. Each terrace isn't just agricultural infrastructure. It's a physical record of the family that built and maintains it. Specific families are responsible for specific terraces, relationships that trace back generations. The terraces carry history in their shape and placement. Their inheritance that can't be divided or sold. Their responsibility that passes from parent to child. The Zhuang people developed cultivation techniques specific to this mountainous terrain. They understood soil composition, water management, and rice varieties that thrive at different elevations. This knowledge exists in practice, learned through doing rather than formal education. When elders die without passing on what they know, the knowledge disappears. Modern economics threaten these terraces. Rice farming is hard work for relatively little return. Younger generations often leave for cities, seeking easier employment with better pay. When terraces aren't maintained, they erode. What took centuries to build can deteriorate in decades of neglect. The terraces' value extends beyond agriculture, their cultural landscape embodying specific worldview about human relationship with land. They demonstrate that humans can modify environment without destroying it, can work with nature's patterns rather than against them, can create beauty while producing food. Tianshan Grand Canyon stretches approximately 24 miles, carved over 500,000 years by water and wind erosion. The deeper sections drop 1,800 feet, creating vertical walls that support unique ecosystems adapted to different elevations within the same canyon system. Over 200 species of rare plants and animals live here, including some that exist only in this canyon. Isolated by vertical geography, these species evolved separately from closely related populations elsewhere. The canyon functions as evolutionary laboratory, demonstrating what happens when populations separate and develop independently. The rock layers change color with seasons. Spring brings yellows and greens as winter moisture supports temporary vegetation. Summer dries everything to browns and grays. Autumn adds reds from specialized plants adapting to temperature drops. Winter brings snow that clings to rock faces, creating stark white against dark stone patterns. Walking through the canyon means moving through geological history made visible. Different colored bands represent different periods of deposition. Some layers contain marine fossils from when this area was underwater. Others show desert conditions. The rock preserves evidence of climate changes that reshaped entire regions. The canyon's formation required specific conditions. Rock with the right composition, water flowing with sufficient volume and consistency. Time measured in hundreds of thousands of years. Change any of these factors and the canyon wouldn't exist. Geography is contingent. What exists depended on countless variables aligning. modern canyon ecology is fragile. Development upstream affects water flow. Climate change alters precipitation patterns. Tourism creates foot traffic that erodes trails and disturbs wildlife. The canyon survived 500,000 years of natural change, but might not survive a century of human impact. Mount Wutai rises to 10,000 feet, one of Buddhism's 4 sacred mountains in China. Spiritual significance here dates back over 1,500 years, making it among the oldest continuous Buddhist sites in the country. The mountain features 5 main peaks, each with its own name and religious meaning. The region spans roughly 60,000 acres containing more than 50 temples and shrines. These aren't small chapels. These are substantial complexes with multiple buildings, courtyards, and supporting structures. Some temples house thousands of Buddha statues. Others feature ancient manuscripts and religious artifacts accumulated over centuries. Summer temperatures on Mount Wutai can reach 70 Wushans at lower elevations. Comfortable for pilgrims and tourists, winter drops below 20 at the peaks, creating harsh conditions that test devotion. Monks who live here year-round endure winters that most people would consider unlivable. Their willingness to suffer for spiritual practice represents commitment that transcends comfort. The mountain shelters several rare and threatened mammal species. These animals survive here because the terrain is too difficult for extensive human development. The mountains provide refuge that's increasingly scarce. As development consumes land elsewhere, protected mountain areas become final strongholds for species with nowhere else to go. Buddhist pilgrims have climbed Mount Wutai for centuries, following routes established by earlier generations of devotees. Some walk the entire circumference of the mountain, a journey taking days. They stop at temples to pray, make offerings, and seek blessings. The physical act of pilgrimage is itself spiritual practice. Effort matters, destination matters, but the journey is the point. The mountain's spiritual significance isn't diminished by scientific understanding of its geology. The rock doesn't care about religion. The peaks don't become less sacred because we know they formed through tectonic activity. Meaning is layered onto physical reality. Both truths can exist simultaneously. Zhijin Cave extends more than 15,000 feet through limestone, making it one of the world's largest cave systems. The cave formed roughly 2 million years ago as acidic water dissolved limestone, creating chambers and passages that seem impossibly large when you're standing inside them. Maximum depth reaches 1,412 feet below the surface. At this depth, temperature and pressure create conditions different from surface environment. Air circulates in strange patterns. Sound behaves unexpectedly. Your senses struggle to interpret an environment they didn't evolve to handle. The cave hosts unique ecosystems completely adapted to permanent darkness. Species here never see light, don't need to. they've evolved other sensory systems for navigation, hunting, and survival. Studying these creatures helps scientists understand how life adapts to extreme conditions. Stalactites inside the cave reach heights of 23 feet. Massive formations that took thousands of years to develop. Each one represents patient accumulation. One water drop at a time, depositing minerals that slowly build upward. The formations are fragile despite their size. Human touch can damage centuries of growth. An underground river flows approximately 1,600 feet through the cave. The river carved these passages, working constantly to expand tunnels and chambers. It still flows, still erodes, still shapes the cave in ways too slow for humans to perceive directly. But given enough time, the river will fundamentally transform the entire system. Navigating Zhijin requires electric light. Natural darkness is absolute. Without artificial illumination, you can't see your hand in front of your face. The darkness has weight. It presses against you. Makes you understand viscerally why humans evolved fear of the dark. In environments like this, light meant life. Darkness meant getting lost. Falling, dying alone. Laojun features a karst system with limestone peaks reaching 3,300 feet. Recognized by UNESCO for natural beauty and biodiversity. The area covers approximately 1,000 acres containing hundreds of streams and waterfalls that create complex, interconnected ecosystems. Over 600 rare plant species grow here. Many adapted to specific microenvironments found only in karst terrain. Limestone chemistry creates unique soil conditions. Water drainage patterns differ from other geological formations. Plants that thrive here often struggle elsewhere. The area supports numerous threatened animal species that require intact forest habitat. As surrounding land gets developed, Laojun becomes increasingly important as refuge. Animals don't recognize park boundaries. They range where food and shelter exist. Protection must extend beyond designated zones to be effective. Temperature in Laojun ranges from 50 degrees to 80 degrees year-round. Relatively stable conditions that support consistent plant growth. The climate allows species diversity that harsher conditions would prevent. Different temperature requirements can coexist when the range stays moderate. Laojun hosts one of China's longest suspension bridges, attracting tourists seeking adventure rather than just scenic views. The bridge spans deep gorges, swaying slightly when people walk across. It's engineered to be safe, but feels dangerous. That combination of actual safety and perceived risk makes it appealing to certain visitors. Despite UNESCO recognition and increasing tourist attention, many people remain unaware of Laojun's existence. It hasn't achieved fame of more marketed destinations. This obscurity is both problem and protection. Problem because lack of awareness means less support for conservation. Protection because excessive tourism damages what it claims to value. Yulong Snow Mountain rises to 18,360 feet, one of China's coldest mountain ranges. The peak sits near tropical regions, creating unusual situation where ice and snow exist, in proximity to landscapes that should be much warmer. This happens because altitude compensates for latitude. Elevation creates cold that geography wouldn't suggest. The mountain once formed part of ancient trade routes, where Tibetan and Chinese merchants exchanged goods traveling the Silk Road. The routes passed through high mountain passes, exposing traders to brutal conditions. Many didn't survive the journey. Those who did carried goods that commanded premium prices, precisely because transport was so difficult and dangerous. Yulong covers roughly 55,000 acres, distinguished by biodiversity that shouldn't logically exist given the extreme conditions. The range contains pristine forests, harboring rare plant and animal species adapted to cold, altitude, and specific soil chemistry found only here. When these species disappear from Yulong, they disappear entirely. There's no backup population elsewhere. Climate fluctuates from 32 degrees Celsius to 68 degrees Celsius, depending on season and elevation. This range allows different species to occupy specific niches based on their temperature requirements. The mountain functions as a vertical ecosystem with tropical species at the base, transitioning to Arctic species at the summit. The unique geological development created this unusual combination of tropical proximity and permanent snow. Tectonic activity pushed rock upward fast enough that glaciers could form and persist despite latitude. The mountain became an anomaly, colder than surroundings predict, hosting species that shouldn't coexist. Yulong's forests are considered birthplace of ecosystems that later spread to other regions. Species evolved here, adapted to specific conditions, then migrated as climate shifted. Studying the mountain helps scientists understand how life responds to environmental change. Information increasingly critical as human activity forces rapid climate shifts worldwide. Basongcuo Lake sits at 12,167 feet elevation, one of the world's highest lakes. It formed from glacial melt with maximum depth around 420 feet, creating habitat for species adapted to cold, high-altitude conditions with low oxygen levels. The surrounding area spans roughly 6,000 acres, contributing to biodiversity that includes numerous rare species. These creatures exist at the edge of what's physiologically possible. The altitude makes oxygen scarce. The cold slows metabolism. Only specialized species can survive. Water temperature fluctuates between 37 degrees and 68 degrees, depending on season and depth. Surface water warms in summer sun, but deeper layers stay cold year-round. This temperature gradient creates distinct zones where different species dominate based on their thermal preferences. Basongcuo was historically known as the colorful lake because water color changes constantly. shifting from green to blue throughout the day. The effect results from suspended particles, dissolved minerals, and light angle combining in ways that produce different wavelengths dominating at different times. The lake's high elevation means less atmospheric pressure, which affects how water absorbs and reflects light. Colors appear more saturated. Blues are deeper, greens more vivid. The effect is subtle but noticeable when compared to lower elevation lakes with otherwise similar characteristics. The ecosystem here is fragile in ways that lower elevation systems aren't. Species operating at physiological limits have less margin for error. Small environmental changes produce disproportionate effects. Warming that lower elevation species could adapt to might exceed what high altitude species can tolerate. The lake functions as climate indicator. Changes here signal shifts occurring across larger regions. Monitoring Basongcuo provides early warning about environmental changes that will eventually affect areas currently unaffected. The lake is canary in coal mine for the broader Tibetan Plateau ecosystem. Jiuzhaigou Valley stretches approximately 37 miles. A vast nature reserve covering 115,000 acres. The valley holds nearly 1,000 different plant species, many rare and endangered. This concentration of biodiversity results from a varied elevation, creating multiple climate zones within single valley system. The area was historically inhabited by minority ethnic groups, including Tibetans and Hui. Local legends about valley formation carry significant cultural meaning, explaining landscape through stories that encode knowledge about seasonal patterns, resource availability, and environmental hazards. These stories functioned as survival information transmitted through generations before written language existed here. Lakes within Jiuzhaigou display stunning colors, resulting from minerals and algae. Blues range from pale turquoise to deep cobalt. Yellows vary from soft cream to intense gold. The colors shift based on time of day, season, and specific location. No two lakes look identical. The valley is famous for a phenomenon called winter in autumn, where visitors see vibrant red leaves and ice simultaneously. This happens because different elevations within the valley experience different seasons concurrently. Lower sections still showing autumn colors, while upper reaches already frozen in winter conditions. The color contrast is jarring. Red leaves against white snow, liquid water next to solid ice. Summer and winter occupying the same view. It violates expectations about how seasons work, creating visual paradox that photographs struggle to convey adequately. Jiuzhaigou's beauty made it popular tourist destination, which created the problem of too many visitors damaging what they came to see. Foot traffic erodes trails. Pollution from tour buses affects air quality. Human waste impacts water systems. The valley must be protected from the love that threatens to destroy it. Conservation efforts now limit daily visitor numbers, require guided tours, and restrict access to sensitive areas. These measures annoy tourists who feel entitled to unrestricted access. But without them, the valley would deteriorate beyond repair within decades. Protection requires saying no to people who want to say yes. Tianchi sits at 5,500 feet elevation in Xinjiang, covering approximately 5 acres. Despite small size, the lake holds significant importance both geologically and culturally. The surrounding rocks formed during the Pleistocene epoch around 2.6 million years ago, providing valuable data about Earth's geological history. The rock layers offer insights into climate conditions, volcanic activity, and tectonic shifts that occurred during formation. Geologists study these layers to understand processes that shaped not just this specific location, but the broader region. What happened here happened elsewhere. The rock remembers. Average wind speed at Tianchi can reach 47 km/h, creating rapidly changing conditions that affect the ecosystem. Strong winds stress vegetation, limiting what species can establish. But wind also brings moisture, distributes seeds, and creates environmental variation that increases overall biodiversity. The lake is home to endemic cypress trees found only in specific high-altitude regions. These trees represent evolutionary adaptation to extreme conditions. They grow slowly, live long, tolerate cold and wind that would kill most other species. They're survivors, products of thousands of generations winnowing out anything not tough enough. For visitors, Tianchi offers high-altitude lake experience without extreme technical climbing. It's accessible while still feeling remote. The combination attracts people seeking nature without committing to expedition-level difficulty. It's a compromise between genuine wilderness and convenient tourism. The cultural name, Heavenly Lake, reflects traditional Chinese understanding of high mountain lakes as closer to heaven, more pure, more sacred than lowland water. This isn't scientific observation. This is cultural interpretation layering meaning onto geographical reality. Both truths coexist. The lake is water in a depression. The lake is sacred space. Both are true. Nalati spans 370,000 acres of grassland in the Tianshan Mountains, characterized by majestic scenery and the unique culture of the Kazakh people. The grasslands exist at roughly 6,000 feet elevation, creating distinctive climate with winters dropping below 30°C and summers mild enough for comfortable outdoor activity. The Kazakh culture here is rich in nomadic traditions. People historically moved with seasons, following grass for their livestock. They lived in portable dwellings, owned few possessions, existed in rhythm with natural cycles that city dwellers have forgotten. Modern pressures push towards settlement, but some families maintain traditional practices. The area welcomed millions of visitors in recent years, around 2 million in 2019 alone. This tourism brings money that supports local economy, but also threatens the traditional lifestyle and environmental balance. More visitors mean more infrastructure, which means permanent development, which means the grasslands gradually convert to something else. What makes Nalati exceptional is the seasonal transformation. In summer, the grasslands explode with wildflowers, creating landscapes so vibrant they look oversaturated. Colors so intense they seem artificial, but it's real. Just nature showing off what it can do when conditions align. The flowers attract pollinators which support bird populations which attract predators, creating interconnected food web that functions entirely without human intervention. The grasslands are ecosystem, not scenic backdrop. They work as a system. Remove one element and others adjust or collapse. The Kazakh people developed deep understanding of these grasslands through centuries of dependence. They know which areas support most grass, which springs provide clean water, how weather patterns shift, where to move when seasons change. This knowledge exists in practice, not in books. It's threatened by modernization that values written knowledge over lived experience. Standing in Nalati during wildflower season, surrounded by colors so intense they hurt your eyes, wind bringing scents of hundreds of different plants, horizons stretching miles in every direction, creates feeling that's increasingly rare. Space without congestion, beauty without commercialization. Nature operating according to its own rhythms, indifferent to human schedules and expectations. These 29 places share something beyond beauty. They share the quality of being undeniably real while feeling impossible. They exist in the space where what you see contradicts what you think should be possible. They force recalibration of what normal means. Standing at their edges, walking through their valleys, climbing their peaks, the distinction between real and imagined becomes meaningless. They are what they are, stone and water and ice and sky arranged in ways that make your breath catch and your understanding stumble. China keeps these secrets not through deception, but through geography. They're remote, difficult to reach, unmarked by billboards advertising their wonders. You have to look for them, have to want to find them, have to be willing to travel uncomfortable distances through unremarkable terrain to reach places that redefine remarkable. The ancient phrase remains accurate. These are where heaven touches earth. Not because gods live here, because standing in them makes the boundary between possible and impossible blur, until the distinction doesn't matter anymore.